Hello and welcome to another edition of Currently in Quincy. I'm Joe Catalano, and on today's program, we'll talk with Quincy's Department of Natural Resources Commissioner Dave Murphy, all about improvements to the city's parks this year. First, though, we do check news for you. Quincy Mayor Thomas Koch issued a statement regarding the Friday morning incident in which an armed robbery suspect was shot and killed by state police here in Quincy. The mayor said that incident demonstrates how first responders risk their lives every day.
We see things on the news all the time, but this is a real stark reminder about the importance of law enforcement and how they put their lives on the line for us each and every day. This could have ended a lot worse with a lot more injury or deaths, but through the professionalism of our police officers, both at the state level but also at Quincy level, men and women in blue, they did an incredible job. It's a reminder of what they do each and every day, what they go through, and their families. I'm sure when that come on the news, those families are seeing that in the news and wondering if that's their husband or wife or son or daughter that's at the scene, and worry about that. We always got to be mindful of that. You know, in these times that we're living in, there's been a lot of scrutiny around the country on police, but at the end of the day, they're here to protect and serve, and today they just did that in Quincy.
36-year-old Eric Leach led police on a chase to Quincy after reportedly robbing a 7-Eleven in Rockland at gunpoint, then stealing a Rockland police cruiser, causing several crashes along the way before finally being cornered at the BJ's gas station on Bergen Parkway in Quincy. Norfolk County District Attorney Mike Morrissey says police were forced to shoot when Leach exited the cruiser with a police rifle. The incident remains under investigation. Quincy Mayor Thomas Koch this week will name 9 volunteers to serve on a new committee that will examine the city's diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and procedures. The mayoral commission is being formed in response to a recent city council vote approving a new department of diversity. The mayor had said he didn't see a need for that new department, but will establish this committee to examine the city's hiring and recruitment practices, along with government efforts to communicate with residents and accessibility issues. City Council President Nina Liang supported the new department. She says it would show that the city is serious about welcoming everyone.
At the end of the day, and these are conversations that I've had with folks, I can't go out there and change everyone's frame of thinking. I'm not trying to do, I can't look at you, Joe, and say, I'm going to change the way you are as a person, right? That's not the goal. I think the goal is let's hear from folks and their experience and their story so we can digest that individually, learn from that, and then identify individually what we can do in our daily lives to make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure everyone in the city feels safe.
The mayor said his goal of the new commission is to send a message that all residents are valued. The commission will report back to the mayor in the fall. Quincy Mayor Thomas Koch also promoting his proposal to create a new home for Quincy College. The mayor wants to buy the Monroe Building on Hancock Street in Quincy Center, tear it down, and put up a new 15-story building that would be home to the college and also to city offices. During a recent video message, the mayor showcased how the new building would fit in with Quincy Center.
The cemetery, so you can see City Hall there, and straight ahead, that larger building coming up out of the ground, that would be the look of the new building. It kind of really pays attention and respects the architectural gems of the Greek Revival Church of the Presidents and the Greek Revival City Hall. But also, if you look at how the floors step in going up, it also tips its hat to the bank building, the Art Deco building down at 1400 Hancock, which has a very similar step-in type design. So it's very well thought out by Jim Edwards, who did the concepts for us. Here's another look from, if you're coming south on Hancock Street, President's Place will be on your left. That's how it would look on Hancock Street. So the college would have an entrance on Hancock Street as well as the MBTA side. And this other one shows the entrance for the MBTA side. So if you come off the train, come off the bus, boom, right into the college, and there you are. So it's very convenient. It is a commuter college, so you couldn't ask for any better location than right next to a MBTA station, in this case Quincy Center Station. So it makes a lot of sense.
Koch is seeking City Council approval of $23 million to begin the project. He also wants to tear down City Hall glass building, saying that it needs millions of dollars in repairs. and expand the Hancock Adams Common. The City Council's Finance Committee is currently reviewing those proposals. Now, the former Beachcomber nightclub on Wollaston Beach in Quincy is gone. Crews last week demolished the iconic landmark, clearing the way for a passive park in the future. The city purchased the property from a group of developers last year for $2.25 million to prevent plans for restaurants and apartments that neighbors said would have made a bad flooding condition in that area worse. The city tapped the Community Preservation Fund to buy the property and another parcel on Harriet Avenue in Montclair where apartments were proposed. That land will remain open space. The Beachcomber closed in 2015 after 90 years in business. Interfaith Social Services of Quincy is once again taking their annual Stop the Stigma 5K road race virtual this year due to the pandemic. Executive Director Rick Doan says participants are encouraged to hold their own 5K from April 26th through May 2nd by registering by April 2nd at stopthestigma5k.org. Participants are encouraged to share their photos and videos of their own 5K and participate in a contest for prizes in categories that include craziest running socks, most scenic route, and best Stop the Stigma spirits. Last year's virtual event raised a record $60,000 for Interfaith's New Directions Counseling Center. Doan says he expects the center to be busier than ever due to mental health issues related to the pandemic. Coming up, Quincy Department of Natural Resources Commissioner Dave Murphy will join us next.
The COVID-19 vaccines can be our chance to get back to our plans, who we are, what we miss, to get back to each other, to life. But it's okay to have questions, like, how were the vaccines tested? In rigorous clinical trials among adults of diverse backgrounds. Can the vaccines give you COVID-19? You cannot get COVID-19 from a vaccine. Why should I get vaccinated? Protecting yourself also helps protect the people around you. Find the latest information at getvaccineanswers.org.
I support a state without stigma.
I know addiction is a treatable illness.
I look beyond the addiction. I see the person.
I know medication can help people in recovery.
I know that words matter when talking about addiction.
When we stop the stigma, we support recovery. Learn how you can be part of a state without stigma.
Hear someone go, "Didn't it come from you guys?"
Strangers cough at me.
Move away from me.
Someone spit towards my direction. All the stereotypes that we've worked so hard to break are just going to be reversed. And I won't let that happen.
We all have to play our part.
I donate my plasma.
I've been making masks.
We deserve respect as much as everybody else.
I'm a firefighter, not a virus.
I'm a mask maker, not a virus.
I'm a nurse.
I'm a delivery woman, chef, a neighbor, artist,
Bus driver.
I'm a doctor.
Fight the virus. Fight the virus.
Okay, so today we're checking in with Dave Murphy, the Commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources here in Quincy. Get a little update now that spring weather is approaching. A lot more folks getting outdoors and enjoying the city's parks and recreational areas. And Dave, that is all under your purview. How are you?
Doing very well, Joe. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. And ironically, you were the very last in-person guest last year in 2020, just before the pandemic hit. And at that time, remember, we talked about how outdoor space was going to be at a premium, because of the pandemic. And boy, has that not proved to be true, yes?
We saw probably as much use in our park system during the pandemic as any other year in recent memory. I think with many of the gyms being closed and a lot of the exercise studios, dance studios, et cetera, being shut down, and everybody feeling cooped up, being in quarantine, that, our park system became a critical way, not just for people's physical health, but for their mental health as well. So, I think that, our parks, I've always thought they've played a critical role in our community, but I think over the course of the last 12 months or so, they've really, really helped our residents, deal with a very difficult time.
Yeah, I know in the beginning there had to be all kinds of obviously COVID restrictions with the terms of capacity and social distancing, sanitizing, all those things. Is that still in play in the parks?
It's still very much in play. Yeah, I think people are fatigued with COVID, but it's still out there. I mean, it's still something that we're taking very serious and we're dealing with on a regular basis. I am very proud of our efforts to date. In fact, Michelle Hanley, our Director of Recreation, was nominated for a national award based on how the Recreation Department handled their summer program last year. If you remember, last summer, people weren't leaving the house. We was kind of grown accustomed to being able to manage COVID a little bit better than we were at the beginning. But when we ran that summer rec program without incident, I might add, that was a pretty unique program, and many cities and towns simply just eliminated programming all throughout the summer, which was really tough, especially for kids that didn't have the structure of a regular school day with a sporting program, dance classes, etc. So the rec program played a real critical role for our young people last summer. And we also did the park monitoring program, if you remember. We had people, college students that would have otherwise been working that were unemployed, that we were able to put to work monitoring our tennis courts and basketball courts. And we had facilities open before any other community. Now, the downside of that is we had people coming from far and wide to come to Quincy to play basketball and tennis, and we really had to manage that. So it's been the most unique year of our lifetimes, but I think it's one that, if you're willing to think creatively and if you're willing to have a can-do attitude instead of a can't attitude, you can really kind of separate yourself from the pack. And I think with the help of the Recreation Department, we had as best year as we can under the circumstances.
Yeah, no, I remember it clearly. There had to be hand washing stations installed, I know, on some locations. And again, certain numbers of people on courts at certain times, everybody kind of sharing, if you will, and much based on the honor system, too.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Joe, I mean, we can put up signs and we can do some enforcement, but at the end of the day, we're counting on people to make the right decisions by themselves, by their family, and by the community. And, there's an age gap there. I think most adults understand the seriousness of COVID. Most of their parents are older and they're looking to protect other people. Our issues are with young people that think they're invincible and they're going to live forever. And, sometimes the teens at the basketball courts need to be reminded that COVID is still out there and it needs to be taken serious. But by and large, I think we haven't seen any issues. I know our youth sports programs operated somewhat successfully through the course of last year, and the presidents and leadership in those groups were excellent in putting in specific protocols, working with us as facility operators. And there were a couple minor bumps in the road, nothing serious, but they were managed very well. And the young people got to go out and have as normal a year as possible under the circumstances.
Yeah. Do you know where there'll be any kind of restrictions this year on outdoor spaces?
Yeah, there'll still be restrictions. We follow the state guidelines. Governor Baker just issued his, 4-1 guidelines this week, limiting the amount of people you can have in outdoor spaces. I know that we're in that unique fall 2 season, if you will, with the high school sports. So the football programs are out there, and the athletic directors of both schools have done an excellent job in coming up with a system that allows parents from both the home schools and away schools to attend. I do hope that we can continue to expand that. We do have the space at our outdoor facilities. Basketball, when you're playing in an indoor gym, should be handled differently than a football game, a baseball, softball, lacrosse, et cetera, which we're coming into the spring. So, and again, Joe, I think to your earlier point, it really comes down to us all working together. The folks that are at these games and, attending their children's or their friends' games need to be smart about what they're doing. They need to make sure they continue to wear the mask and continue to social distance as much as possible and take it serious enough that hopefully, the more serious we take it, the sooner this thing ends.
Yeah. How has your staff been able to cope during this time, Dave, in terms of, keeping up the facilities and also just staying healthy themselves?
Yeah, we've had a lot of support from the mayor's office and municipal finance office in utilizing some of the federal money that's been made available to manage COVID. So we've put some pretty specific protocols in place about, making sure that we're not putting multiple people in a truck unless it's absolutely necessary, and if so, wearing masks at all times. And our folks, we remind them regularly that, that this is a serious issue. Now, the Park and Forestry, we work outdoors 90% of the time, so we have that in our advantage. But at the same time, whether it's showing up in the morning to the lunchroom to get your assignments or the break room, we do lunch and break differently. They take it out in the field instead of coming back to the office. So there are little things that we've been able to do. We haven't had an outbreak here. We've had 1 or 2 isolated cases that are usually caught from a family member. I went through COVID in December, as a result of a family member getting it. So it's out there. It's going to happen. And fortunately enough, most of us will get through it, and unfortunately some won't.
Yeah. Did you notice kind of more wear and tear on equipment than normally because so many more people were using the facilities?
A little bit, yeah. We did see, especially in the what I'd refer to as our passive recreation areas, our walking trails and those parks, that people were just out looking to exercise. Like I said, many of our basketball courts were very attractive to folks from the region that had their own communities completely shut down all their courts. So, we did see quite a bit of activity. Now, we are on the tail end of a $38 million investment that was led by the mayor into our park system. So, we do have great new facilities. So not only were their facilities closed, but then they realized, holy smokes, look at all these new parks and facilities that Quincy has. And, I think we're going to see that this year too. I think we'll see a lot of people coming from around the region, because whether it's Kincaid Park or the Mount or some of those other locations, a lot of our facilities are new, not all of them, but a lot of them are new, and that they became very attractive, not just to Quincy residents, but people from all over.
Sure. And a new resource has developed, yes, to kind of find those locations. Tell us about this online trail map system, if you will.
Yeah, Julie Sullivan, who was hired as our environmental scientist as the Department of Natural Resources, has been fantastic. She's worked on a number of projects for us, including Butler's Pond and Sailor's Pond. But as the pandemic evolved and we saw how our parks were being used, one of the things that I'm proud of is our ability to adapt to the public's need. It's not our job to tell the public how to use the parks. It's our job to assess what the public needs are and then adapt to those needs. So what we noticed during the pandemic, as I mentioned, when the gyms were closed and all the exercise facilities, we saw a number of classes, self-defense, aerobics, exercise, you name it, cross-train, CrossFit, all those folks were in the parks. But we also noticed an incredible amount of foot traffic in a lot of our passive areas, our hiking trails. And Julie got the idea of putting together a full mapping system using GIS. So she had the handheld GIS system and would go through a number of locations in Quincy. Now, we started with about a half dozen, and that grew to a total of 18 locations, some of which are under the jurisdiction of the DNR. Mm-hmm. Some of which are state locations, some of which MWA has Nut Island. So she's put together a very interesting program. We've called it Hike Local. And it's a list of 18 different locations where people can go out for a walk outside in some of our beautiful park locations. She's included some of the historical facts about those locations, which I think people will find fascinating. And, as a lifelong resident, I think I take for granted how many people don't know about some of these places. And I think that Julie's project is really going to further open up some of these locations and, hopefully build some stewardship too. Now, I think the more people use Faxon Park and Marymount Park and the Crusher and Squaw Rock and Squantum Point and some of these other locations, they tend to take ownership of these natural resources and help us not patrol the police, but keep them clean and really advocate for them with other residents. So, we're very excited about this project. It's really cool. Julie, she had an intern, Jacqueline Devlin, that helped her quite a bit on it as well. The city's GIS department has been extremely helpful in getting this thing launched, and it can be found right on the city website under the Department of Natural Resources. And it also has a little QR code. So if you go on our website and snap the QR code right in your handheld device, you can follow the trails as you're in any one of these 18 different locations. So you can learn about some of the historic markers that are on these properties, whether it's Moss Wachusett Hummock or Caddy Park or as I mentioned, Squaw Rock. So it's a really cool project, and I think that people will be interested in going to some of the places that they haven't gone already. And if they're out there hiking the Blue Hills or Marymount Park, that they may try one of the other 16 different locations in Julie's program.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, people that have lived here all their lives may not even be aware of some of those places, or there's still, many new people coming to the city all the time. And as we all know, we're so in tune to being online these days that's probably the first place they're going to go to look for that kind of information. So that'll be a handy thing for them to have too.
We live in a very unique place that I think sometimes we take for granted. We have the Blue Hills to the west, and we have the ocean to the east, and the amount of geographic and ecological diversity that we have is often taken for granted. We're a city, so people don't think of us in those terms. But I think the folks that utilize this program and take a walk along the waterfront on Nut Island and enjoy the views down there, especially at sunrise or sunset, people that hike through the Blue Hills, people that go to Squaw Rock and see the geological formations out there at Chapel Rock. It really is incredible what we have right here in our own backyard. And we're just trying to highlight that. How I feel about the city. And I think we're trying to share as much of that with our residents as possible.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point about stewardship too, if people find these places and enjoy them, they want to keep them nice, right? So they can continue to enjoy them and their families too.
Right, which is a good segue for me to put a plug into Cleaner Greener Quincy, which we had to cancel last year because of the pandemic.
Yes.
So we're going to do a Cleaner Greener Light this year on May 1st. It's always the first Saturday in May. This Saturday, it's early, it's the 1st. And we do encourage people to put together small pods, small groups that they can work together in, recognizing social distancing and mask wearing, et cetera. But the city will return to supporting a lot of the community groups that participate at the neighborhood parks, their schoolyards, the marshes, et cetera. So we are queued up for Saturday, May 1st to do Cleaner Greener. Now, unfortunately, we're going to have to cancel the citywide celebration barbecue that we typically have at the end of the event for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But we do encourage folks, we will support folks with tools and T-shirts and bags and trash pickup, et cetera, for those that skipped a year last year and are looking to get out of the house and do something productive in the community. And certainly our trail system is a great place to focus on if people are looking for projects.
Oh, that's great. Are there going to be special Cleaner Greener T-shirts this year, Dave?
There will. We looked at doing Cleaner Greener masks, but we were hoping that was that was on the tail end. Maybe we'll incorporate some design on the T-shirt that recognizes what we've all gone through with this pandemic.
I think that'd be really appropriate. Hopefully, they'd be a collector's item, never have to be used again.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, they're like, for instance, Friends of Faxon Park. They have their own cleanup coming up actually this weekend, but I'm sure they'll participate in that as well. And there are other smaller groups. The garden clubs, I know, are very active in that as well. And you can have your own just neighborhood group, right, of 3 or 4 people keeping socially distanced and cleaning up your own street.
Absolutely. Yeah, if there's a particular location that people are interested in, they can call us at 617-376-1251. And if they're not tied in with a group and they just want to contribute, we can connect them with one of those other groups. Now, of course, we're going to keep social distancing in mind and make sure that we do it in a safe manner. But whether it's an individual or whether it's a group, the city is happy to support people when they want to help us out.
Yeah. Any kind of major projects for 2021? I know the Marymount Parkway Improvement Project is well underway. I think there's some talk about making more improvements to Faxon Park. What's on your agenda?
Yeah, we have quite a few. The Marymount Parkway project is underway right now, which you'll see the work being done by CNOT and is underground utility work, so we can take down the really unattractive light poles and wires. You know, it is a parkway. It goes through our most popular park in the city. You know the connection with Olmsted and Elliott and some of the other most famous landscape architects in our country's history. And we really want to give it a look commensurate with the significance in the history of the park itself. So right now they're doing the underground utility piece. The next phase of that will be doing the sidewalks in the road over from the parkway from Hancock Street down to Southern Artery. At one point, we're going to have a landscaped island in the middle, similar to what you'd see at Russell Park or Elm Ave, with a lot of color and attractive plantings, historic lighting. Really make it really so when people drive, it's a heavy commuter road. So when people drive through there, they know that they're in a beautiful and historic park. We're also completing a project that was started 20 some odd years ago at Upper Marymount, where we have the granite columns going in, and there's a wrought iron fence similar to what you'd see at the public garden in town. Really set that off. That was a design that was done in 1937 by Herbert Kellaway, who was another Olmsted associate. And the fountain went in quite a few years ago. And now we're finishing off the granite pillars in the wrought iron fence this spring. After that, we'll be doing some improvements to LeBrecq Field and Howe's Neck, putting in a brand new playground down there, doing a walking trail. We mentioned encouraging health and wellness in response to the pandemic. We're putting a perimeter walking path, much like we did at Kincaid, so the people in the neighborhood that just want to go out and walk a couple of miles can go out and do that. We're talking about building a brand new playground at the Swanham School. That's one of the playgrounds that we have not completed yet. We're waiting to see what the shakeout was in the design of the school construction project out there. So working with the community, we've designed a new playground that we're going to be installing this summer. Faxon Park is another project that we intend to do some significant investing in. We've been working with the friends and the counselor down there to come up with an appropriate plan. Faxon Park, we talk about walking trails. Faxon Park has a pretty unique character, and it's still a very wooded area.
Yeah.
So we do want to maintain the character of that park without overdoing it as it relates to recreational facilities. So, maybe enhancing the walking trails that are there. There's talk of putting in the city's first disc golf. I don't know if you're familiar with disc golf, but it's basically a Frisbee golf. It's growing wildly in popularity.
Yeah, that's where you shoot your Frisbee into those chains, the basket of chains up on a pole. Yeah, okay.
Yes, and people of any age can play it. We find it to be very popular with a group that the parks don't necessarily serve. That kind of 20 to 40 group would go out and play some disc golf. It's being featured now on ESPN, so it's growing rapidly in popularity. And we think it's a good location for it. It doesn't take away from the character of the park. You can play in a relatively wooded area, so potentially some disc golf, potentially new picnic pavilion up there as well too. So there's a phased plan for Faxon Park, and like I said, we want to implement some improvements without taking away from the real character of the park up there. So we've got a pretty aggressive agenda. We're in design and engineering. The bridge that goes down Marymount Parkway across Blacks Creek. The state has a rating from 1 to 5, 5 being the worst. That's currently a 4. So we're in the design and engineering to replace that bridge. And we'd also like to kind of tie that into the designs we're doing for the park. So not just build a functional bridge, but actually make it look attractive and fit in with the parkway theme. At some point, we're also looking at building connectivity within Marymount Park, much like we mentioned the Olmsted and Kellaway plans. Pine Island right now is very isolated. We saw about 2 weeks ago, there was a fire out there. The fire department could not get out there originally. We talked about opening up that side of the park with a footbridge from the Ryan Boathouse across Pine Island. It's a beautiful, beautiful spot. Drumlin, right in the middle of 70 acres of marsh and creek and open space and wooded area. But right now, you can't get out there. Occasionally you'll have a teenage drinking party out there, and that's about it. The average person has probably never been to Pine Island, and it's a beautiful spot. And we're in design and engineering right now as part of the Marymount Park Master Plan to build a footbridge out there and really open up that part of the park.
Wow, you do have a lot going on.
A lot of support.
Yeah, that's true too. And in the future, I know there's a park planned at the site of the former Beachcomber, which has just been demolished, right?
Yes, the Beachcomber came down yesterday.
So the plan is for a passive park. What would that entail, Dave?
Well, I do think we're looking at it a couple different angles. There's a planning process that we're going to go through with the counselor and the neighborhood down there. But I do think, one of the reasons the mayor created this department is to take a look at coastal resiliency, and there's a number of projects we're working on in that regard. But you take a look at the value of this property, which is, I think, the largest privately owned parcel along the beach side of Quincy Shore Drive. How does that play in the city's future efforts on dealing with whether it's sea rise, coastal resiliency, what have you? So, I think the ultimate goal there is to create flexibility, not do anything dramatic there. We're not talking about, tennis courts or pickleball or anything else like that, but to build a passive park, find an appropriate use for that location that balances with the neighborhood. But also recognize that from time to time, with a decent storm, you're going to get some spillover from the seawall that'll go across Quincy Shore Drive. So, is there, can we help with the hydrology in that neighborhood? I know the city has invested millions in both a pump station right behind the property. So how do we leverage ownership and control over that property now to help the entire neighborhood, not just as a park, but much like we did at Kincaid, where we recognize that hydrology and flooding is an issue in that area. And how do we leverage that parcel to help all of the parcels around it?
Yeah, it's, a long history of flooding in the Strand area there, going back decades, as you're well aware. So that's definitely has to be incorporated. And I know you're working as well on the new seawalls out at House Neck to make sure that area is mitigated as well. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, the last big project, Joe, I failed to mention, we also oversee the cemeteries. And Pine Hill Cemetery is really the last frontier of city-owned land that is undeveloped. And we worked with C. Naughton to develop about 500 new graves this past year. The next phase of that will likely take place into next year, which will be probably another 4,000. It's the last land that we have up at the cemetery. We spent almost 15 years negotiating with the state. There's some endangered species habitat up there. So we put a conservation restriction on 15 acres in order to develop the last 7. So we've been able to open up about 1.5 acres this year, and the next phase will be a pretty substantial phase, and that'll occur over the course of next year as well too. So Quincy residents haven't been able to buy or purchase burial sites on a pre-need basis for a number of years, and the mayor's goal is to open that up probably in about 1.5 years, 2 years, so that people can take that issue on a pre-need basis and not have to worry about it.
Good to know. Good to look forward to, for sure. Anything else we should touch on right now, Dave?
That's about it, Joe. I think I'm.
Is that all? A lot going on for sure, and I think the creation of your department, I think represents the fact that the city takes its natural resources seriously and recognizes the value that it has for the community.
Yeah, I did mention Julie Sullivan's work on Butler's Pond, and we're hopeful that this summer, Butler's Pond is a large catchment area. It's a drainage pond. When I grew up as a kid, Sailor's Pond and Butler's Pond were fed by natural springs, which they're not, and they were bottomless, which is equally ridiculous, right? But the truth is that they capture all of the stormwater from all around those neighborhoods. Yeah. And with that stormwater comes everything that's in the street and the storm drains and everything else like that, and some of it's not so great. Right. So the pond fills in with sediment, it turns green from the algae, and really needs to be kept up. And unfortunately, for 75 years in the making, the city hasn't done that. So this summer, we're hopeful that the council supports an appropriation that we're seeking to actually get in there, remove a lot of the sediment from the pond. The neighborhood group down there, the Friends of Butler Pond, has been excellent. Yep. So hopefully with Julie's leadership this summer, we'll be able to do that project as well.
All right. Again, if you could give out your phone number, Dave.
Sure. Our phone number here at Natural Resources is 617-376-1251.
All right. Appreciate your time. Good to talk to you. And hopefully next time it can be in person again.
I hope so, Joe. Good to see you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
special thanks to Dave Murphy for joining us today. Thank you to our crew. Thank you for watching. A reminder to visit our website anytime. Just go to qatv.org. You'll find all of our latest programs, news and information, video on demand, live streaming, and much more. For all of us here at Quincy Access Television, I'm Joe Catalano. Please stay safe.